The Big H Podcast, tune in now. Conversations that'll wow. Laugh and learn, stay a while. Let's explore that Hilton style. From the highs to the lows, every story just explodes. Mike's got questions on the go, diving deep from head to toe. Every week the guests align, sharing moments so divine. Stay with us, the pace is fine. Every episode you'll find. The Big H Podcast, tune in now. Conversations that'll wow. Laugh and learn, stay a while. Let's explore that Hilton style.
Mike Szczepanik, school season and school year is over. How's your summer going so far?
So far, pretty good. Just started, so we just had the 4th of July. Just kind of like getting into summer mode. Got a couple of the around the house projects to do my deck. Try to resurface my garage. I'll see how that goes. Watch a couple of YouTube videos and see how it goes. So.
For our viewers or listeners don't know, Mike is a science teacher, former coach at the school. School's a grind. We all know that been teachers. How was this year in terms of the courses that you taught, the title that you held there, and how that teaching kind of went in general?
Yeah, so I'm a program coordinator for science. It means kind of like a department head, liaison, all incorporated into one for 712 science. And I would say this year overall, in terms of like teaching, was better than last year. Kind of still riding off of like a couple of years ago, one of those groups, one of those groups that was really rock solid, including your niece, was in that class. It was just like one of those like, wow, this is awesome. So, and then last year, not as much, and that kind of set me back a little bit. But this year it was solid. It was solid. Nice group of kids. It for the first time I can't even remember, I actually stuck to my timeline. That goes, right. You get into a topic and you're like, oh, it's not going as well. We need to spend more time on it. And all of a sudden you're like 2 weeks behind and you're trying to cram that last unit into just a little bit. So, but actually we had time to review so I teach AP bio. So, our year kind of ends. We want to be done with the course essentially by the start of May because exams start happening then. So, but overall, I think it was a very solid year. Looking forward to next year as well. So
when you do the coordinator position, what does that entail?
So it is I teach 0.6, so that's like 3/5 of my day is teaching, and then the remaining 2/5 is working with. It stems from things like I help with the budget. I'm there to communicate, things from the Office of Curriculum Instruction down to the teachers and the teachers back up, kind of that liaison kind of a role. Usually at least 1 to 2 meetings a week, either with our school principal, Jeff Green, and all the other program coordinators, or a district one that includes, some of the, includes like Kristen Polini, and it's just, kind of like, I remember Dr. Kosaric one year, and it really kind of stuck with me, this thing. He goes, we got a lot of great things. You've got, each of these arrows pointing and moving us in a direction. Then he kind of showed this diagram of all these arrows pointing in different directions, and he said, what it's all about is lining up the arrows so that we're all going in the same direction. I feel like that's what my role is, is to kind of, along with the other program coordinators, get everyone kind of going in the same direction. Not kind of a mandating, but look, this is where we would like to go. How do we put our own spin to get us in that direction? So
how many years have you been doing that position?
This was my 4th.
Okay.
So I feel like I'm going to I'd like to continue. It's a 3-year position. You have
Next
to,
question.
yeah. So you have to re-interview. This last time after 3 years, no one wanted it except for me. So that's one of two things. Either I made it look like it's really hard, or I'm doing a good job. So one of the two.
I think it's the latter. um, so in terms of the courses that you've taught, tell me a little bit more about the different disciplines.
So pretty much biology.
Okay.
So living environment, some elective courses. My first year first few years taught these like general elective courses, a little bit of trial by fire with those groups.
Mhm.
But and I've taught chemistry a couple of times. I know enough to teach chemistry, but I'm not a very good chemistry teacher. I'll say that right away. But yeah, so pretty much biology, high school level. So.
Growing up, did you always know you wanted to be a teacher? And if so, did you know science was going to be your forte?
So my dad was a physicist at Xerox. My mom was a speech pathologist at Churchville Tri-Li. I went to Fairport.
Mm-hmm.
I always liked science. Just remember, I wasn't sure. I liked biology. I took AP biology in my senior year, and I was like, this is really cool. I'd like to. So that became my major. But I didn't know what. Like I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a doctor or anything like that, or into any kind of like medicine. The environmental stuff with a lot of field work, was appealing, but not enough to me, give me that drive. I just remember my sophomore year, I was helping some of the other kids in my residence hall, and this one girl goes, "You're really good at explaining this stuff. You should be a teacher." And I was like, "Huh, maybe." And it kind of just built, and after a while, I was like, "Yeah, I think that's what I want to do, be a science teacher." So no, I didn't start out that way.
Right.
It's kind of funny when you're growing up, you go, I don't want to do what my parents do,
Mhm.
And then I became like kind of a mix of the two. I got the science from my dad and the kind of like teaching from my mom. So,
What was it like watching your dad be a physicist?
um, I didn't know a lot about exactly what he did.
Right.
I knew there were times when he would come home and bring some work home. One thing that my dad was really good at, he's probably the most organized person I ever met. People will say I'm organized, but I'm like, you've never met my dad. Like it's incredible. The attention to detail that he would put on things.
Mm-hmm.
We were lucky when I was kid with my sister. I have one sister. She's 4 years younger than me. We went on these long family trips. I mean, 7 weeks for one of them.
Nice.
Yeah. We've seen every state except for Alaska. I still have to get to Alaska. It's
Not
a bucket
bad.
list item.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But we took multiple of these trips. Just got to see so many things. He had it down day by day. Had the reservations already set the next one. Created this book. We're coming into a new place. You'd hand us the book and say, what things do you want to do? And it'd be like a list of maybe 15 to 20 things that we could do over 2 days. We obviously were not going to get them all, but what are one or two things you guys want to do? So we'd look through, we'd pick a couple things. There were things that they wanted to do. So, it was really nice. At the time I was like, missing my summer with my friends. It was really hard. But you look back and you go, I have an experience that most would never have. So, but that kind of that's what stood out with my dad, was just really attention to details and organization.
Is he still working?
My dad passed away about 4 years ago. And my mom just passed away this past year. So
Okay.
now I'm the oldest in the family,
Right.
which is, no, it's nothing.
Right.
But,
Are there qualities or characteristics that people say, when they see you, oh, you remind me of your mom, you remind me of your dad?
yeah, I think a lot of it is more on my dad's side because, I'm very organized, but again, I'm not like to his level.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a planner too.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like to, one step to the next step, whether it's coaching or teaching or, right now trying to figure out how I'm going to do that garage floor
Mm-hmm.
in my house. Plan it all out so everything's ready to go and then just let the plan work itself. So that was kind of something I picked up from my dad. My mom was a very personable person.
Mm-hmm.
we would go to like, do you remember Gold Circle? Remember that? It was
It's
a
a
long
store,
time.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
long time
yeah.
ago. Like, I always hated going there because the lines were long at the end, and it was always long enough that my mom could find someone in the line that she knew a connection, this one or that one. And so we're through the line, we're ready to go. I'm like, come on, let's go.
Right.
No, she's got to finish up her conversation for the next 10 minutes with this person. It's like, oh, but that's kind of like how she was. She could meet somebody and find a connection with them, like just like that. So got a little bit of that. I'm more of an introvert that wants to be an extrovert, kind of person. So
I think it's good when you know yourself.
yeah,
You're self-aware.
yeah.
Going back to those family trips, did you have a state in particular that you enjoyed, or a couple states? Or?
The national parks out west are just something, if you haven't gone to see, you have to. I mean, I can't even put my finger. I mean, if I had to go to one, Yosemite is probably the best. There's so many different things. Oh, Yellowstone. There we go. Yellowstone's another great one too. But there's just so many different areas within those national parks that you're like, it's wild. It's, you see it in pictures, but then when you're there, it's a totally different thing.
Now, on your travels, was it all by car? Or?
All by car.
Wow.
Yeah. So when we did the Way Out West trip, there was one 15-hour drive straight to Chicago. That was a bear.
Did Dad do all the driving, or did Mom? And
Mom did a little bit.
Yeah.
And then as we got older and I got my license, I did a small part. But mostly him. Yeah. So I have trouble with drives over 3 or 4 hours. I can't picture doing a 15-hour drive. So
how did you and your sister pass the time during all? Did you play the license plate game?
we did that.
Yeah.
We did a punch bug game. Remember the old
sure do.
Beatles? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'd see how many we would make guesses. Like that was another thing. We'd keep track of those. How many punch bugs you're going to see on this whole trip. So we would keep track of them. I don't ever remember who won or anything like that, but it was just the process of like, oh, there's one, one, plus, leading up to it, we would, we'd get either books or things that would pass the time, find music and stuff like that. But we weren't allowed to look at it until the trip, so it was like, okay, it's something new. So, which I think was really helpful, because if I had already looked over those things, it's not the same.
Right. Now, do you declare yourself a reader? Like you like to read and stuff like that?
Yeah, not as much anymore. I mean, it's actually interesting. It's hard to just sit down and read. There's so many distractions, it's something like this summer, and actually every summer I'm like, okay, got to force myself to read again, but yeah, I would say I'm not like the avid reader, but I'm a reader, I'm more into the nonfiction and, whether it's science-based or teaching, but those are like the big things. And, when I was coaching, I was definitely reading coaching books as well. So
now going back to your sister, you said she's 4 years younger.
3.5. Yeah.
3.5. Is she local?
She is. She lives in Webster. She is a social worker and counselor. So she really fit into the role that my mom had too. So she's got her own practice now, so doing quite well.
She have a family herself?
She does. She's got 2 daughters. One just graduated from Schrader. The other one's just entering the high school at Schrader. So
On a personal level, like losing your parents, I've lost both of mine. Have you guys coalesced amongst each other and still get together and hang out?
Yeah. I mean, we were all that time spent together. It was either going to drive us apart or bring us together. And, we work well together and, we share a lot of things, we bicker like siblings would once in a while, but 99% of the time we're on the same page. And so, any kind of birthday or anything like that, it's going to be definitely a family get together. Holidays always, sometimes it's challenging with other, the in-laws, kind of thing. But we definitely get along very well.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to SUNY Geneseo, and then for grad school, I went to SUNY Brockport.
And Geneseo, what years would that have been?
Right around your brothers.
Okay.
So let's see.
early
90,
90s.
90 to 94. Yeah.
I visited a couple times. What do you remember about the culture around that school at the time?
Well, it was definitely a party school in one way.
Right.
It was, what I loved about Geneseo was it just was, there's a beautiful view of that
Mm-hmm.
valley every day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a lot of just, I don't know, just, I have better memories from going to Geneseo than I do high school.
Mm-hmm.
In high school, I thought was great. I had some really good friends, but Geneseo definitely had some really, really good friends that I'm still definitely in touch with. So
At Geneseo, I mean, I know you coached running. Did you run on the school team
I
there?
did a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I started my freshman year. I got injured. I never got injured in high school, but I got injured in college. Actually, it was a non-running kind of issue. I We'd play tackle football after the
Sure.
football games on Sunday, and well, I got hit pretty hard one time. I noticed it, but it wasn't until I started running that I noticed it. I guess they found it shifted a vertebrae just a tiny smidgen, but enough that when the blood flowed through it, one of the nerves would just touch on there, and I would get this numb sensation. It started in my calf, and it would run up my whole leg,
Mm-hmm.
and it even get to the point. With Geneseo, it's a valley, right?
Right.
So you're always, whenever we go off for a run, we're always finishing coming down that hill, and we get to intersections. I'd have to grab onto someone next to me because I wasn't stopping. I couldn't feel or control that leg as well. So I had to take 3 months off, and then went back to the doctor and started running again. It happened again. Like, oh, great. The guy goes, take 3 more months off. I'm like, I can't take 3 more months off. I mean, years and years have built up to this point. Now 6 months off. I mean, I'm starting from square one. I found this woman, and I forget the process, but it was Asian woman that did this kind of massage therapy that kind of just realigned my spine. And it took a long time, but it worked, and I got back to running. But really, at that point, it was a grind. I had found other things that I liked because running, you get kind of almost like a fraternity of your friends that are also runners, and I had separated from them because it was hard. I'm not watching them all go run. I can't do it. I was missing it. So I found other friends and kind of became more tight with them. So going back, not only was it hard to get back to where I was, when you're at the college level, it's challenging. It's not like with running, it's all that built up physical attributes. That it's not like I still know how to put my one foot in front of the other kind of thing, but it's to get that aerobic base and everything. So it was a challenge, and it was taking me away from then the friends that I had made in between. And so just didn't really agree with my coach at the time either. This is the power of a coach, I guess I would say, because on the positive and the negative too. He said, if you get back to where you were at the end of the season, you'll be going to those postseason meets, and there was about 25 kids on the team, boys, and I was probably about number 22 when I started back, because I was starting from square zero. Made my way up by the SUNYAC championship. The meet before, I was number 7. I was in that previous meet, and they were allowed to take 10. So I'm like, oh, I'm in. I made it back. It was like hard work, and I was really motivated to just get back there. And I'm like, unfortunately, I knocked off one of his, in my opinion, his favorite athletes, right? And so he then came up with the system. He averaged everyone's results. Well, I started out 22, 21, all those that average, it didn't work. I ended up being number 11. And so I didn't even get to race after that. So that was like, all that work, and you're going to do that. And after you said this, I was like, nope, I'm done.
You're done with running?
I was done. Yeah.
My father always said, it's not how you start, it's how you finish.
Mm-hmm.
That guy didn't go that route, but what year would that have been for you? Was that your sophomore?
92. Yeah, my sophomore year.
Okay. Did
I
you
was
ever
still 91? Actually,
did you join a fraternity or just
I did.
You
Yep.
did?
Yep.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was a tall cap Epsilon Teak.
Okay.
So yeah, those are
Uh,
some of my best friends still.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, was that tough rushing and pledging? I went to
Yeah.
Geneseo as well, and I
I
saw
mean,
some of those
yeah. I mean,
dudes
we didn't do.
memorizing stuff.
Yeah, and ours. I mean, wasn't the physical, wasn't the
Yeah.
make you drink, anything
Right.
like that.
Right.
I mean, there was parties and stuff like that. We
Hmm.
definitely did drink, um, but it was more about making sure you knew about everyone else.
Hmm.
You know, getting to know them. Where were they from?
Hmm.
How many brothers and sisters they have? What's their major? What are their
Hmm.
plans? You know, all those like little things
Hmm.
to try to memorize.
Right.
You know, and they mess with your head a little bit there, here and there. But you know, it was just but it wasn't anything that I would say, you know, where I would be nervous about my own kids doing.
Hmm.
You know, there were definitely a no haze kind of like
Hmm.
fraternity, which is great because I know there's definitely
Right.
some things you saw.
Did you have a sister for a sorority or?
No, we didn't.
Okay.
Not officially,
Hmm.
but
So you're at Geneseo. What year did you decide education is the route I'm going to go?
so by the start of my junior year, I had decided by that point that sophomore year was kind of like, oh, maybe. So
Hmm. Any professors that you recall that were good for you?
yeah. There, now I'm forgetting his name.
As long as you remember what he taught you, I guess
Yeah,
that's the most important thing.
yeah. I had a couple that were really good. There were a couple that as you know, they feel like they're there to lecture, and that's
Hmm.
about it.
Hmm.
But even them, it was good because you have to experience that.
Hmm.
You have to adjust how you learn and how you're going to get that information.
Hmm.
Um, that not every teacher is going to be the A+ teacher, but they still have value and they still have a lot of like things you can learn from. So
Did you take a lot of labs too during your coursework?
yeah.
What was the most interesting, or maybe
Oh,
on the
yeah.
opposite side, the most challenging?
I didn't even think about this, but I could definitely tell you it was a chemistry one.
Hmm.
Bio majors had to take 2 years of chemistry, inorganic the first year, organic chemistry the second, and organic chemistry was the one everybody talked about, especially organic chemistry 2. It was rough. You had to memorize so many different equations and mechanisms and stuff like that. It was tough, but the lab was really cool.
Hmm.
So the first semester of the lab, we learned all these techniques to isolate compounds and figure out what they were. The second semester, they gave us 2 samples, and it was like a vial like this big. And by the end of the semester, we had to figure out what it was. It was just, okay, go back to that notebook of all those different techniques and stuff that we learned and what they meant. And that was all you got. If you spilled it, you did something, you were docked points, for it, right? I still remember I had it. I went to my lab professor. I go, I think it's this. And he looks it up. He goes, nope, try again. Like, what? Everything points to it.
Right.
He goes, except for that.
Right.
I'm like, oh. So I just remember it was like, they're 3-hour labs. I mean, so I just went out into the hallway in a little cubby that they had out in the hallways and just sat there like going, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, to me, that kind of stuff is interesting. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out this puzzle, not saying like, here's the things you have to learn and go memorize them, then spit them back out later. Right. But it's like, I have to figure this out, and no one else has to do this one because my compound is different than everyone else's. It was really very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And then in education, anyone that goes into teaching knows you have to student teach.
Mm-hmm.
How was your experience in the Pittsford School District?
It was good. Mr. D, they called him, was a chemistry teacher. And then I had my Miss Isgreg. Yeah, that's what it was. She was my middle school life science one. I had a chem minor, so I was also doing a little bit of chemistry. I wanted to get a biology placement, but at the time nobody was taking student teachers, I guess. So I didn't have a biology at the high school placement, but it was good. It was definitely 2 different styles of teaching. I definitely liked the approach the chemistry teacher took, more of an inquiry based, like try and figure this out. He was funny. The kids liked him that way. I have lost contact with him. I know he had moved, and I don't know where to, or if he even still around. I don't know. So, but I enjoyed that.
When we all get into teaching, we have this wide-eyed, open look, like this is what teaching's going to be. When you started doing that student teaching, what were some lessons that you learned on the job?
I actually remember more of the lessons when I first started teaching.
Okay.
When you didn't have that safety net of another cooperating teacher in the room. And my start at Hilton, I've only worked at Hilton. I did some subbing for about a month and a half, but started in March in '96. And I don't know what the whole backstory behind it, but they had let go of the first teacher right around Christmas time. I applied and interviewed for his position, which was split middle school, high school. Didn't get it. The other guy did. And but he had some sort of health condition that kind of started manifesting itself a little bit more, something I don't remember exactly what it was. His doctor told me he had to cut back. And so he decided to do the middle school part. And they called me back in. And so I did the high school. It was just 2 classes. They were general level. That first year was one Regents biology. We were still calling it biology then. And then a general biology class. So, they just said, try to get as many of those kids to pass the Regents and hold down the fort in the other class,
Right.
because it was a tough one. So, I could still remember the day. They oh my gosh, that general class, they were tough. These weren't Pittsburgh kids,
Right.
and
Right.
Hilton's like, they're, what I'll always remember about Hilton is that they're all hard workers. They're, roll up your sleeves and get to work kind of, kind of a community. There's no real handouts, in a lot of ways. Pittsburgh, on the other hand, was a lot more, they kind of believed they were entitled, to certain things, but not at Hilton. Those kids, though, they were tough. They flooded my room one day.
On purpose?
Yep. At this point, and it's not like this in that area of the school anymore, but there was this little, kind of like a metal grate. There was the rug in the whole room and this metal grate, which I didn't think you could open. Apparently you could. It's in the back of the room, but underneath it is a water spigot. I don't know why they would ever have a water spigot down there, but they worked weeks of plugging up all these holes. They found all these papers they had shoved down in corners and everything like that. And then they turned the water on and left. It was the end of the day, and I went home too. Came in the next morning, and it was Pat Casey, our head custodian. He's in there with the dry, or the the water vacuum, whatever you want to call it, soaking it all up. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is awful. That same week, we were doing this bottle biology, which is you set up like a 2-liter bottle, and you have different areas. You have a plant growing on top, and there's a kind of a water-based environment underneath. And I go, that's not the bean plants that we were growing in there. So there were some pot plants growing in.
I was thinking that.
So, I was like saying, oh, well, I took it home and I dried it and smoked it. No, I didn't do that. No. So this is, I'm going off cue here a little bit, but later on, one of my sons broke his arm, and it was a bad break right at the elbow. Had to spend a night in the hospital, and he had surgery with little pins put in the very next morning. And I spent the night there with him. The next morning, there was this nurse that was in charge of it, and I go, she looks really familiar. She looks really familiar. And it turns out it was one of my students that was in that class. And she was of that group, was really sharp. And I said, and I didn't remember doing this, but apparently I said, you don't belong going into the next general level chemistry. You should go and take Regents chemistry. You're good enough. Don't be held back. So fast forward, my wife had come that next morning, and the nurse came in, and she goes, do you teach at Hilton, or did you? I'm like, yeah. I go, you're Becky, aren't you? And she goes, yeah. It was kind of a nice little moment there. She goes, you were the reason I became a nurse. It's like, was great. And my wife was just kind of joking around. She goes, "Were you in that class that was growing pot plants in the back?" She goes, "Well, that's my husband. He's much better now." She's much better now.
Right.
So, but it was definitely an experience. That was a tough group of kids. So,
Well, you got a success story right there.
Yeah,
I'm sure
yeah.
she didn't marry a person that wasn't a success.
no, and he's a successful person as well too.
So, did you find that most of your challenges were management wise, or were they
At the initial part,
instructional?
yeah, it was. I didn't have to deal with those kind of like problems. I had to learn on the fly.
Mhm.
But it's all about, with teaching, it's about establishing your voice, and it's about, almost like giving off an air of that I'm in control,
Mhm.
and you could do this, you can do that, but in the end, we're going to follow this.
Mhm.
And having that kind of voice, it helps after years too, because you not only do you learn how to do it better, but you also develop your reputation,
Mhm.
whether that's good or bad,
Mhm.
But initially the reputation that I had was that the kids could get away with stuff, and
Mhm.
so but it took a couple of years, and it ended up being, I think, pretty solid right now. So
Um, when you were in college and you were running, did you take courses to become a coach, or when did that interest come into play for you?
I kind of always wanted to coach running,
Mhm.
but after I had stopped running, that kind of like left.
Mhm.
Um, so it was 98, spring 98. Yeah. Spring 98. Dave Swinson. I
Mhm.
remember that name at all.
I do.
Now he's an administrator in Penfield. Yeah, Penfield. He asked me, hey, I had gone to school with his wife, Tony Lynn. In fact, we were right next door to each other in our dormitory at Geneseo. And she knew I was into running. She said, "Why don't you ask him?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'll try it." Um, so like it was like just rekindling what I had wanted to do before,
Mhm.
but had kind of forgotten about it, put it in the back burner. So yeah.
In high school, did you participate in running and other sports?
I always played other sports, but never really organized. I mean, other than like say Little League baseball.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't love baseball. It was
Mhm.
never something I enjoyed. I like to play, but I wasn't really as good as everybody else at
Mhm.
that. Played a lot of pickup basketball. Wasn't a It wasn't a week. We'd play like 3 days a week. We go, just somewhere play pickup basketball.
Mhm.
I did that in college as well too. So intramurals after school as
Oh
well.
yeah.
So I mean, but I never any kind of organizational
Mhm.
um, structure to it. So
What was it like growing up in Fairport? As a young kid, like, did you go off for the whole day and then come back at night? Like, what was it like?
hmm.
Or were you on the road so much on your family trips that you never had
All
that
right.
much time?
I mean, we when it was our free time, we would had a couple of good friends that we'd go exploring. Actually, a lot of times there was kind of just on the outskirts of our neighborhood. There was this woods that we would just go hang out,
Hmm.
and just free play,
Hmm.
um, be home by whatever time,
Hmm.
and we'd be home by that or close to it. You know, it's a different era then too, like I, I I would have trouble now with my own kids. Just go ahead, go off.
Hmm.
And I remember reading something recently that it's like there's no difference in like abductions or kids getting hurt or those kind of things than it was back then. But it's just those things are more in we see it,
Right.
internet
Right.
and on TV and stuff like that. So we're more, as parents, we're more like, oh, I don't want that to happen.
Hmm.
So the radius that our kids go is much smaller than what it
Hmm.
used to be. Um, Outside of like being organized, like through clubs or something like that. Um, but back then, if you did something you weren't supposed to do and someone else saw it, your parents were getting a call,
Right. Right.
and it was like everybody was your parent.
Hmm.
Everybody was like, now it feels like I don't know a lot of the kids are in the neighborhood, and I'm sure a lot of the other families don't know my kids. So, so it's not quite the same in that sense, but definitely exploring, definitely just like doing whatever we kind of could. A friend of mine had a pool, so we spent a lot of time, in the summer in pool, that kind of stuff.
Now switching over, where did you meet your wife?
We actually met online,
Mhm.
and this was, um, it wasn't, she actually went to Geneseo, but we were kind of like two ships sailing in the wind,
Passing, yeah.
yeah, passing at night, right?
Mhm.
Um, we were in school the same for like 1 year.
Mhm.
Um, she's about 3 years younger than me.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, we met online, and yeah.
What does she do for an
She's actually a
occupation?
teacher as well.
Okay.
So she teaches in Livonia. So
Mhm.
she's got a hike.
Mhm.
Because we all live in Hilton
Mhm.
in the district. She teaches seventh, sixth, eighth, somewhere in middle school, social studies.
Okay.
So
It's kind of nice mix, social studies and
yeah,
science
yeah.
together. Do you enjoy your summers together? Does she work during the summer? Do you work
She
during the
doesn't.
summer?
I mean, we both have little things that we'll do.
Mm.
But yeah, we're all together at the same time during the summer, the whole family. So we do like a lot of little trips. We don't usually do really big trips during the summer. We'll go camping or go visit. Like we're hoping to visit Philadelphia, Cleveland, maybe do a camping trip as well.
Mhm.
But 3-4 days maybe.
Mhm.
Um, so
And prior to the podcast, you talked to me. You got twin boys. Tell me about them.
hmm yep. So Evan and Sebastian are both 11, going into sixth grade at Quest. So yeah, I mean they're fraternal, so they're definitely different. But I mean it's great. I mean they're best friends, each other's
Mhm.
best friends, or at least very close to.
Mhm.
Um, so they they don't have the like I really don't know what to do
Mhm.
kind of thing. They say they do. They always say like, oh, I'm bored, I don't know what to do. But they have each other to play with all the
Mhm.
time, even though they might choose different things to do at different times. Um, I still remember first time I picked them up um, from I think it was kindergarten, and we had decided. Actually, talking to Derek Warren, the principal,
Mhm.
because I wasn't sure. I heard people say, "Oh, put them in the same class, put them in different classes," and everyone was like, "Yeah, that I like this, but this is also good." No
Mhm.
one like said, "Do this or that," and I
Right.
just kept like asking more and more
Mhm.
people. And finally, he's like, "You have to decide. What do you want to do?" I said, well, "What do you think?"
Mhm.
And he goes, "I'd put them in different classes.
Mhm.
They get to meet more friends,"
Mhm.
and that's exactly what happened. But I remember picking them up that first day. Oh my gosh, just the conversation they were having in the back, like they hadn't
Right.
seen each other,
Right.
it's like the longest time they've been apart, right?
Mhm.
And they both had these really cool experiences and they were just
Mhm.
sharing back and forth. I'm like, this is great. Best,
Have
best
they been in
choice.
opposite classes ever since then as
Yeah.
well?
I mean, sometimes they were, no, they've been in opposite classes all the time. Yeah. So,
Now, before the podcast, too, I was explaining to you, I'm a twin, fraternal.
hmm
When I was growing up, yes, my parents never compared us to each other, but teachers were, or
hmm
people that we knew. Have you had that run across that, or?
we haven't so much. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, we're the same way in terms we try not to
Mm-hmm.
compare them. They're,
Mm-hmm.
um, they both play soccer, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, but one is striker, one's the defender.
Touchdown.
So that works out really well because they're
Mm-hmm.
both good at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like comparing like, well, obviously the striker is going to have more goals because
Right.
more opportunities.
Right.
But that's, explained away by the position. So we try not to let too many comparisons come in. I haven't because they haven't been with the same teachers other than say their specials or something like that. I haven't heard any like comparisons in that way,
Right.
but there are comparisons that like Sebastian doesn't mind being on his own.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in fact, sometimes when there's a lot going on, he's like, you know what, I'm going off by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Evan, on the other hand, he's got to be around people.
Mm-hmm.
He really doesn't know what to do if he's by himself,
Mm-hmm.
unless he's playing a video game, which we try to really limit. But
Right.
but there's definitely differences, and it's cool to see, and it's getting more and more, as I'm sure you and your brother had the same thing. So
Do you have people that say, "Oh, he's just like his dad," or "He's just like his mom"? You don't ever say that?
yeah,
Or
but
they say good mix between
yeah,
both.
it's usually more like, oh, he has this from you and that from her, kind of thing. So
Well, I think you're gonna enjoy growing up in the same district and stuff. Not that you are gonna be a helicopter parent or anything. But,
yeah,
Um,
try not to. Anyway.
right. So going back to take a drink, you've been doing a great job here. You submitted some records of what you accomplished as a coach. Go back to that first athletic director that hired you, how you looked at the program, how you said, "This is how I can take it forward."
Yeah. So Dick LeBeau
Mhm.
was my first athletic director, and I was stepping in for Mike Van Auker, who was a long time just phenomenal coach and phenomenal athlete himself.
Mhm.
He had transitioned to Athena, and he did track there for a couple of years, and that's why the position. Actually, they had a couple of years where they were really having trouble finding a head coach. So Andy Foreman was the head girls coach, and then Dave Swinson for a year, and then I was his assistant, and then I took over as head coach in track. In cross country, it was just Mike Van Auker than me. And definitely Mike had a different approach than I would want to take. He I didn't want to give excuses for them being girls.
Mhm.
Like, okay, you're a girl. That's a big deal. Like, we can train just like anybody else would.
Mhm.
And I think he would often say things like, well, you have to be more careful because it's a girl.
Right.
And that wasn't how I was going to approach it.
Mhm.
So it was that first year. I mean, we didn't win a single meet.
Mhm.
We were 2-17, I think, but really it was because we went against incomplete teams, and so we automatically were, So we didn't really win a single meet. Uh, so that was challenging. But I had a really, really good upfront girl, a pretty good girl, and then a lot toward the back.
Mhm.
And you need 5 in cross country to 5 score. So, one really good and then one pretty good, and then the rest toward the back is not going to cut it in terms of scoring and stuff like that. But Kim Sapuro was right from the start really, really great. Probably the first great athlete I had.
Mhm.
And Abby, I know her maiden name now. Or I don't remember. Oh, Bodie. Okay, that's right. I was trying to remember what was her maiden name now, because now she's married and I'm still follow her on Facebook. So she was just a really hard worker, and I would say all of those kids were really hard worker, but they had so long not had to worry about it. Like, they would run over to Quest and then hang out in the playground. I'm
Mhm.
like, what are you doing?
Mhm.
No,
All right.
like, so that's not how we do things. Oh, Van used to let us do this.
Mhm.
Like, he's gone. I'm
Right.
here now. So,
Right.
and it took, a while to do that, to kind of reestablish this is how we're going to do it versus how Van did it.
Mhm.
Van would err on not preventing injury. And
Mhm.
that was probably on my side. There were injuries,
Mhm.
but I was always trying to push a little bit. So, I mean, we both had our strengths for sure. So,
When you're trying to seek out that runner, do you go for athletes, or like how do you like say, that kid can be a strong cross country
yeah,
runner?
at I hate to use the word recruit, but
Mhm.
for
Right.
running sports,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have to recruit because there's no feeder programs. You
Mhm.
might have some families that go on 5Ks, and so they are kind of coming through anyway, or they had an older sibling. But rarely do you get that one that comes into school and say, "I want to run 5Ks through the woods where really there's nobody watching and it's just
Mhm.
me." Like
Mhm.
and it's hard work.
Mhm.
Um, I'd rather, you know, be like Mallory Heiss,
Mhm.
and be the leading scorer of the basketball team
Right.
that everybody's watching and
Right.
everybody's cheering. So you definitely have to find those kids. And I would often look on the bench of the soccer teams because, soccer athletes that translate very well to running. They're running on the same surface that we would be running on anyway. And the ones that are on the bench are kind of like, they'd like to get in and play.
Mm-hmm.
So you talk to them and say, hey, you could be one of our stars in our team. And I would also, when the gym mile was taken a little more seriously by the kids, I would use those times. I would, and then contact them. So, just had to a lot of times I would contact a lot of kids, because you never know too who's going to be that diamond in the rough, the only kid that I ever had as a state champion, Allison Sawyer, she, I recruited her because she ran just under 8 minutes for the gym mile, which, is okay. It's good. But it's not, oh man, I got to get her out. She 7:48 in the mile, okay. But she was one of those kids. And she ended up becoming state champ, so you want also those kids, you want an athlete, you want a kid that can improve, but really running, it comes down to that mentality, especially distance running. Because it's a grind. It's tough, and you're running against other runners, but you're really running against yourself, and you've got to, fight the demons in your head that are telling you to slow down, I'm too tired. And, try to work through those mentalities in a lot of ways. So,
Talk a little bit about the mentality, because everyone says mental preparation is very important. You can't talk a kid into being tough, but what were some methods that you found to be effective with your teams?
Well, cross country is different than, say, track, because track, you're looking at the same thing the whole time. So that in itself is a challenge, especially if you're running a distance. So like the 3,200 or the 3,000, the longest distances in track, which are 8 laps, and that's challenging, to do that over and over and over again. Cross country is different because you're going to have different areas. And so a lot of times in cross country, we'd always go visit the course ahead of time. We'd have a practice there. And we would break it up. Okay, this first part's out in the open. Okay, and it's about 3/4 of a mile. Let's try to be at this point, just kind of break it down instead of just go run. The next part's in this woods. You got this big hill. So there's a lot of little things and tricks that we would always do. One of the things when you're feeling really tired is I tell them you just look at whoever's in front of you, the girl in front of you, and imagine there's a string or a rope tied around their waist, around their hips, and it's connected to your chest. And just imagine them pulling you along. And it's amazing how just that little thing can keep you going. Or if, when you're really tired, just pass somebody. Of course, it feels really good to pass somebody, and it carries you through quite a distance. If you're by yourself, we did a lot of stride counting. So we would take one leg or the other, or foot, I guess I should say, and count how many steps in a minute. And we would practice this. And I got this from Runner's World called him the world's greatest coach. His name was Jack Daniels, not the drink, but he was coaching at SUNY Cortland. Had multiple national championships at the Division III level. He coached Olympic teams too. But he would often be at this camp that I would go to up in the Olympic Training Center in the Adirondacks in Lake Placid. He, at the 1984 Olympics, which was in LA or Atlanta? I can't remember. No, that was LA. Atlanta was 96. So 1984 in LA, he looked at all the distance races. It was before the internet where you could just watch it over and over again. And he was in the stands and he was counting number of arm swings. And he said he used arm swings because the feet were you couldn't tell whose foot was whose. And he counted all of the athletes, and he had a whole group of them together, and they counted how many times they swung their arm, which, you swing your arm, it's the same as your feet. How many times they hit the ground, or how many times their arm swung forward. And it was 180 for both arms, or 90 for 90 high 90 percentage of the athletes at the Olympic Games. And that was, 800 meters up to marathon. Those are definitely different speeds, but they all have that same cadence, and so we practice on getting that cadence. And what I found over the years doing this, you counting in your head, takes your mind off of the pain or the breathing and that kind of thing.
Makes sense.
That was a lot of help, a big help for them. Plus, it cut down on injuries, which, if you see a beginner runner, you see people running around the neighborhoods, right? You can see some of them are more of a lumbering kind of a style, and that's usually because their stride count is really low. So they're up in the air longer, and then they hit the ground with more force. That leads to more injuries. Or not only that, but you want your foot directly underneath your hips. So it's like a nice straight line, head all the way down to foot, even while you're running. Where if you're at a lower stride count, you're actually reaching out in front of you too much. So you're hitting the ground with your heel, and then that's a braking force. And all that force is shooting up your leg. At some point, one of those joints is going to be affected by that. So instead, you land right underneath you, and it's almost like a skateboarding effect, where your foot's hitting around, you're just pulling like this, but it's directly underneath you, and it's not really an impact. It's just a continuous, almost like picture like a tank, wheel, where it's just pulling along the ground instead of bounding all over, all over the place. So that cut down on a lot of injuries that way. Plus it also, like I said, the mentality of it is just count, and they weren't allowed to wear watches then. They are now, I guess. But I said, it doesn't matter. Just count your strides, because you kind of know, because we've done it so many times, what it feels like, that certain stride rate. If you know, okay, but nothing else, it gets your mind off of it for a minute, and a minute in 18 minutes or 22 minutes or whatever long it took to do a 5K is actually a lot. You do it a couple times, it really helps. So we'd also do things like Hilton, despite its name, is not hilly, right?
Right.
And it's so going up hills, we didn't worry about going up hills. It's just like, if you're in good enough shape, you're going to be fine. Just maintain going up hills, maintain your spot. Try to hold on to somebody, not literally, but like mentally hold on to that person. There might be someone that sprints by you going up the hill. Don't worry about them. You'll find them later when they are dying on the other side. But you want to kind of hold roughly your spot. But at the top of the hill, that point where you get to the top of the hill, you're like, and everyone just kind of slows down. It's like, that's where we're going to go. So we would always practice this 50 steps hard at the top of the hill. Recovery takes time. It doesn't take distance. And that's like a big misconception that a lot of people have, is that, well, I have to slow down to recover. Well, if it's a downhill, you're going to recover either way. It's just like if you're driving, you can let up on the gas. You're just kind of coasting down the hill. But now we're just leaning forward a little bit and counting strides, and you're picking off kids left and right. And mentally, that does something to the opponent as well as you. The opponent just is just as tired as you are at the top. When you go blowing by them, they're like, oh, can't go with them. They're done. And mentally, like I said before, passing other athletes in the middle of a race is just perks you right up. So those two things, breaking it up, like we did a lot of visualizations. We would almost always, the day before meet, spend a good 15 minutes just kind of getting in a meditative state. And I would kind of talk through the course, different parts. They had already seen it, so just remembering it and, triggering them to say like, okay, what's happening now? What are you doing? How are you feeling? Just to mentally rehearse that race so that it's like they had raced it before, even if they've never raced that course. So
In a high school race, it's 5K.
5K, yeah.
And did you say it's 18 to 22 minutes?
The really good girls are going to be going, it depends on the course too. Some are more hilly than other, but if you're into the breaking 19, you're really one of those elite athletes. Some of the beginners are going to be, 25 plus minutes. But a good solid runner is going to be in the really low 20s, 20 minutes, 21, even 22, depending on the course. Those are good solid athletes there. So
in a team, do you race as many girls as you want and you take the top 5, or do you
Right.
go, okay.
So it's actually with varsity, there's 7 on the varsity. So it depends on which meet it is. So like the Tuesday, dual meets, the first 7 across are the varsity. So what happens is when they have the score sheet, they have all the athletes' names there, and the official will look, okay, here's the first Hilton, here's the first Fairport, here's the first Greece, and start writing where they are. Now, once they've gotten to 7 in one team, so let's say Hilton 7 came in already, they're 8th, he doesn't count them as a place. So, but what happens is those 6th and 7th runners serve as like displacers, so like pushes the other team's score up. So if we can get 6 or 7 before they're 5th, now instead of getting like say 10 points for that 5th runner, they're getting 12 points, which is just adding to their total. And low score wins, obviously. You're adding up the points. If it's a tie, this better 6th runner is the determiner. So unless they don't have one, then the team that does is going to get the win. So at invitationals, we would have to separate out top 7 in a varsity, and then a JV race would be the rest, or varsity B, sometimes they would call it. So
Now, you talked about coaching girls. I've also known a very highly successful boys coach who once said to me, girls want to be coached like the boys. Any regrets ever, like doing that? Like, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Maybe something that maybe did push that kid too hard or whatever.
yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, especially after we had won a national championship, it becomes, winning becomes kind of like addictive in a way,
Of course.
and it kind of clouds your real purpose sometimes as a coach, becomes like about winning sometimes versus about like really what we're there for. It's high school, we're there to develop the person, and they're probably never going to be an athlete in that regard, but, they're going to be a good person, and how do you develop those things? And so, sometimes I feel like I did push. There were a few kids I pushed too hard. If I had to go back and do it again, I probably would have mostly approached it the same way. But there's certain individuals I definitely would have treated differently. So
It's kind of like teaching.
yeah,
I come home and reflect with my wife, and I'm like, oh, don't know. I think there's a better way
Yep.
or a different way I could handle it. Any assistant coaches that you've had throughout the years that have been beneficial to your program?
I've had a lot of
Or-
assistant coaches in cross country, but with track for sure. I mean, track. I am not any kind of an expert in the shot put or in the jumps.
Mhm.
We are still blessed with probably the best pole vaulting coach in the area, maybe even the state, Andy Fetzner. Year after year after year, he's sending a kid to states in the pole vault. And we had just really track becomes, I would still coach the distance kids. And there were days where you'd be like, okay, just, it's an easy distance day. I'll see you in 40 minutes or see you in 30 minutes, right? Come back here. And then I'm just going around to the other events, and I'm not there to be like, oversee, make sure they're doing it right. I'm actually there to like listen to those coaches. Demetrius Bennett was a longtime jumps coach that we had. I would listen to what he's saying to the other athletes, and sometimes I could kind of tell, like the kid wasn't quite getting, what he was saying, and come here. What do you think he means by that? What is he saying? That kind of stuff. I think was my role there, was to kind of be a supportive person. I think we had some really great coaching teams, and when we were coaching track and stuff like that. So they're good, solid people. I still remember. For track, coach of the year is the winner of the sectional team. Really, it's and it's like, to be coach of the year is like, it's not the coach. It really is like the program, and it includes all those other coaches. And I remember, actually I mentioned Demetrius. I remember he said one time that he goes, yeah, when you win coach of the year, we all win coach of the year. And he's like, it was 100%. It shouldn't be coach of the year Mike Szczepanik or Mike Heiss. It should be the Hilton program, for those kind of instances. So unless you're, I mean, if you're the only coach, then that is, that's different. But then it's the kids too,
Mm-hmm.
you know. That's sometimes, coaches and athletes can kind of feel like they're above the rest,
Mm-hmm.
but really, the old an acronym of team, together everyone achieves more.
Mm-hmm.
It really is true,
Mm-hmm.
especially in high school athletics.
Looking at your resume here, uh, looks like starting in 2004, that's when you went 20-0. You did that for 4 straight years.
Yeah.
D1 champ, D1 champ, D2, D2 champ, and that's where you won 4 straight sectional titles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what was that run, pun intended, like when you did it? Just winning bred more winning, or was it like a grind year after year after year?
Well, then
Or
that's
did
it.
you did the runners? They were young and they just kept maturing, or what was it like?
Well, I had a really good group of kids coming in, and we were building before that. We had like I'm sure what our records were the two
Oh
years
yeah. I
before
mean,
that.
like you go from 9-10, 18-2, 17-3,
Yeah,
and then the leap to
yeah,
undefeated.
yeah. I mean, we were coming, and everyone on our team could feel that. It was um, this is great. It was almost, it fed itself in a
Mm-hmm.
lot of ways. And kids graduated, but new kids came in during that time. But those years going up 2004, starting that year, I got we had a couple of like soccer players that came in. Again, they were bench soccer players, um, but they came in and it was like an instant boom.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they were those type of kids that you challenge them, they respond.
Mm-hmm.
Some kids, you can't challenge them the same way.
Right.
But there is still a website, Tully, New York. It's called Tully Runners, and this guy came up with this thing called a speed rating. Amazing what he did. He did a lot of statistical analysis, looking at different races, and they always, if you graph the place and the time, it always has the same characteristic curve. So we'd use a straight line in that and say, okay, we're going to call this number here on this graph, this speed rating. And it didn't matter what course it was. Maybe the time for a speed rating of, say, 100 was 22 minutes at this course, but it was 18 at this course.
Mm-hmm.
More challenging course. Sometimes even if they cut the grass.
Mm-hmm.
If you're running through long grass,
Right.
it's really hard to run through
Right.
versus really short, quick grass. But I would use those speed ratings. We'd go to like an invitational against teams we haven't seen before, especially. And I would say, okay, here's their top 5. This is that team we're kind of going for, and there's their speed ratings. And what they didn't know was that the speed ratings, if you're within 3, up or down, you're pretty much the same runner. I didn't tell them that. And I would always give the other team a little better speed rating. I would see like in their race, their best speed rating ever was 112,
Mm-hmm.
but most recent was 107. But they don't even know,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I would say they were 112, and I would put all the athletes that I think were going to go to the meet into the list, and hey, well, looks like they're 10 points better than us.
Mm-hmm.
And Caroline Schultz and Amanda Griggs, and all of them, Shelby Herman, Ashley Jones. I mentioned Allison Sawyer before.
Mm-hmm.
All those girls, like you said something like that, they'd be like, "No, they're not.
Mm-hmm.
We'll show them."
Mm-hmm.
And it was like you put the challenge to them, and they were like, they came up better.
Mm-hmm.
And they just all had that same mentality. It was easy for me.
Mm-hmm.
I did the same approach every time, and they responded the same way. But it was it was them. It was so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
It was a grind though too. It was
Mm-hmm.
exhausting. It was exhausting all the time. So when we won in 05, the next year we were an unknown in the national community in terms of running. We were at best a 5th place in the state, which is great. I mean, but when you look at the national 50 states, you're an also ran, kind
Right.
of thing. And we started that year. That same guy that did Tully Runner's website, said of all the teams that maybe could knock off this one team, Saratoga, which would have been year after year after year national champion, it was Hilton. And they put this whole thing together. Why? And we're like, holy cow, it's the middle of the summer. We were at that Olympic Training Center camp all together, and we sat down and looked at this. He goes, what do you think? You know? And we had already talked about the year before, because we were just, what's the next goal? What's the next goal? And I mentioned this. Caroline says she mentioned it, but, I'm pretty sure I did. But either one of us mentioned it, right? That, what do you think? Can we beat them next year? And, at first there was a lot of, no, they're so good. I can't. It was one of the few times where it's like, no, I don't think I can. They had some setbacks over the summer. And all of a sudden it was like, no, we can, and then all of a sudden it became this driving force. We started out as an honorable mention in the national ranking, moved up to 21, 18. And by the time we were going to nationals, we were number 2 or number 3 at that point. And so, but the next year we started out number 1, and that's a totally different,
Right.
you're chasing that team in 2004. Now everyone's chasing you. And we would go to these meets that was like, this is going to be just kind of not that challenging a meet. We're going to work on a couple of little things in our racing. But then the team would be a last minute entry, that was like a nationally ranked team. Like, oh no, we got to race them, So it was just really this grind the whole time. Not to go off to this subject, but the dual meets at that point, they were head and shoulders above everyone in our area. They would sweep almost every meet, go 1 through 5, and even at invitationals, that the counties we were 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. There was one girl that got into our top 5 and sectionals. That same girl moved up to 4th, but really it was us running out in front, and then the rest of the race. And we kind of knew that was happening before the season. And those girls I mentioned, we don't want them to hate us. We want our area to go be cheering for us, be like, really going for it. Like, we got to do something. First meet, they did this on their own. So you go through the chute at the end, you collect your card, the officials are timing everyone. They wait at the end of the chute and they congratulate every single kid. Every meet they did this. And it was like,
Which kids were those again?
So so at that time we had Amanda Griggs, and then Allison Sawyer and Caroline Schultz were 2 and 3, and then Shelby Herman and Ashley Jones were 4 and 5. But even we had other kids after that too, who were in that next group, but were good runners themselves. So they would just.
And it wasn't just the first meet; they did it at
everyone.
Right.
So like all the kids knew who they were anyway, of the other ones, because they were doing so well, and we were getting press and stuff like that. But they also then knew them as a person, as like someone that was a good person. They wanted, so I feel like the area wanted us to do well, not just because it's from our area, but they actually got to know them. So
now, I might have brushed over this, but how many times did you win Coach of the Year for the division? Is that every time you won the division thing here?
Coach of the Year was usually just a sectionals thing.
Okay.
So whenever we won sectionals, it was that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now you were national champs in 2005?
05, yeah.
Okay. Explain what that was like, I guess, as the kids were running at the end. You see the times go up. Like, must have been amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it was out in Portland, and it was on a horse racing course. So it was sloppy. It was, and they did on the infield. They had like a 9-hole golf course on the infield of this. There were no hills. They manufactured some hills, but really the mud was the hills, because foots were getting stuck and stuff like that. So that was the challenge in that one. But so Saratoga was the team we were gunning for. There were some teams from California, but we kind of felt like they were not going to run well because of the weather and this, it was 40s, we figured those California teams not going to be able to handle that.
Exactly.
So we, kept them in our mind because we know they had the ability to, but we didn't necessarily look at them as our ones we're shooting for. It was Saratoga. We had, in the state meet, we lost by 1 point to them. We decided not to go to the federation meet, which is like, combines not only Class A, Class B, Class C, but also the Catholic high school leagues, the independent leagues, all into one race. Only because at that point we felt we were going to get an invite to that national championship. But it was just that many hard, difficult, challenging races in a row. It's a grind. And we needed okay, let's take a break from that. And so I'm recollecting this right now. So it went like this. So we had county meet, county championship, sectional championship, state meet. There was the federation meet. Then there was the Foot Locker national qualifier, which is an individual championship. And then the Nike Team Nationals, which is the team championship. So it was like 7 weeks in a row, 7 straight weeks of just a grind. Not so much the first 2, but once it was state meet, federation. Some kids had individual goals of going to Foot Lockers. And so we decided the one we could skip, and we could have skipped the Foot Locker ones, but I think I got the sense they really wanted to give this a go. And I didn't blame it at all. That's like something you definitely put on your running resume if you made it to that meet. So we decided the federation, I wanted to find out, I had to reach out to the national rankers and say, if we don't go, what's our chance? Well, they always like, well, we can't say yes or no, but I don't think we would hold it against you. And
Okay.
so we decided, okay, let's do that. So we decided to take that one off. We went to Foot Locker Regionals, which is down in the New York City area, Van Cortlandt Park. And Amanda Griggs had always been this one she was delicate. She worked really hard, but she had often would get these stress fractures. Her older sister, Shannon Griggs, also at the time, would get stress fractures. And it was just like, always had to just be careful with her because, to get all 5, we had 5. We had 5 at that level. We didn't have 6. We lost any one of them, that was going to be in trouble. Well, Amanda got hurt at the Foot Lockers. It's a week to go before we're going to nationals. And it was not a stress fracture, but it was a stress injury. This was like the level below that. So she didn't run that whole week. She did a whole bunch of aquatic running. She was getting treatment. At the time there was this place right in town that it was a physical therapy place next to the Arlington there.
Yep.
And so those guys were doing everything they could. She went to the meet on crutches. So she's going to there's actually a funny story. We're trying to catch connecting flights on our way to Portland. And there's a we're like, come on, you can do it.
Right.
So, but I mean, she came there and, other teams knew who we were at that point because we were ranked number 3 in the nation. And they saw her coming in at crutches. There was a lot of like pushback, like, well, why did you have to go to Foot Lockers? Like a lot of that stuff was going around. And if I had to do it again, I probably would have done the same. But, maybe I know there's one workout with Amanda I would have held her back on. I was kind of let her loose. And maybe I shouldn't have done that one. But so we had this story. Here we have our top girl on crutches coming in. And she was getting a cortisone shot before we left. But it was the time between when we left Rochester and the actual time we raced. It was right at the end of where that cortisone was still, kind of had that numbing effect. So it was, I had to talk with her family, like, is this something we want to do? And they were all like, yes, we still want to do this. So, I felt comfortable that everyone was on the same page. And so there was a point though, when after she got injured, I remember going, man, we got so close. That's it. We're not going to be able to do this. And I still remember like Shelby Herman, don't worry, coach. We'll just have to step it up. And it was like, I'll still remember that moment. Get a little emotional on that
Sure.
one because, and Ashley Jones right next to her. Yeah, we'll just have to step up.
Right.
It was just so cool, you
Right,
know.
right.
Like you can't coach that kind of
Right.
thing. So
Exactly. And I mean, every time I drive in, I think there's like they talk about the band being national
Mhm.
champs, the soccer team, and then it's about
yeah,
your cross country. Um, it's so that flight coming back must have been special too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and sorry, I got off track there. There's more to that national meet,
Sure.
you know, because the Saratoga boys team also went,
Mhm.
and so um, the boys race was first, and we were warming up outside of this stadium,
Mhm.
but the announcements going on, we can hear it. And one thing we always knew about Saratoga is they would go out at this crushing fast early start.
Mhm.
And so like all year long we had trained like, go out really hard, go out really hard, because we were gonna have to match that. And we heard Saratoga boys went out really hard and they're out in front. They're leading the race. Their boys team wasn't quite as good as their girls team, and but their number one runner ended up winning that race. And so, we said it just what we thought was going to happen. They're going to go out hard. So, so here we are. We're at the line now. Amanda's finally taken off her crutches for the first time
Mhm.
and starting to run. And they went out hard, and they were leading right from the start. And there were a couple of they would update the score. They had chips, that we had to put into their shoes. That they would go over this, marker like they do now a lot of like the road races and stuff, and it would spit out the time. So we get these updated. This is before cell phones, right? So they gave us a little Palm Pilot, right? It would tell us what the scores were at each 1 kilometer. So, we were up big in the first kilometer. Second kilometer was good, but third and fourth, they were closing on us. And so it was like, do we have enough? Do we have enough? Can we hang on? And they came through and we did. And it was, that was quite a feeling. And nobody could find Amanda because as soon as she came off, she went to the ground. They pulled her into a medical tent and it's like, where's Amanda? What happened to her? And so that we got her. And then Caroline had gone off looking for her. So it was just kind of like this. For a while, we didn't have everyone there. It was like, where's this person? Where's this person? But then when we all got together, it was quite an experience. So, yeah.
One for the history books.
Yeah.
It's you have a great career. What was the thing we said I got to step away? Was it the family that came along, or what?
Yeah, and my wife working in Livonia,
Mhm.
she had to be home, and for her to come back, like it was challenging. And I could see it was a grind on her, and
Mhm.
and it got to a point. I always said when my coaching feels like it's a job,
Mhm.
then that's time to go.
Mhm.
And it I wasn't, and I'll take 100% of the blame. And I wasn't connecting with the kids in the later years.
Mhm.
And like say the last 3 or 4 years, we weren't connecting
Mhm.
quite the same way. And I felt like I was pulling too much and they were pulling back.
Mhm.
And it just became like, I'm doing this because I have to do it. And then it
Mhm.
was like, that means I don't want to do it.
Mhm.
Let's find someone that can come in that wants to do it, is passionate, like I was when I started,
Mhm.
Um, and I wanted to see my kids.
Mhm.
They were starting to do other things, and I was missing some of those things. I was
Mhm.
gone on weekends. I was getting home late on weekdays. That's the usual coaching grind, as you know.
Mhm.
Um, I was missing out, and I only got one chance of that. It's not like the next team comes up,
Right.
I, we wanted 2 kids. We got them in one shot, and so, this is my only opportunity to be that dad that I wanted to be.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was kind of building over time. And then it just became like, you know what, I'm done. I'm done. It's good.
How long was it when you knew that it was time to be done, and then you officially resigned to retire? Was it bing bang, or was it like
It was pretty close.
Yeah.
I mean, um, even though I had some thoughts for a couple of seasons before, it wasn't like overwhelming. Like that told me I have to do
Mhm.
it. but it was the end of one season. It was just, that was probably my most challenging season. I just felt like again, I was like, I wasn't connecting,
Hmm.
and it was just this. I don't need to do this anymore. I've had a good career, and it's hard as I know, like athletes, you see these professional athletes that try to hang on too long.
Hmm.
I didn't want to be one that just hung on too long. I've seen other coaches around in the area that I felt like, probably had hung on too long. Maybe in my opinion, but you could see that they had success years before, and now we're just, I didn't see the passion that some other coaches had. So, yeah, it wasn't. Maybe I thought about it over a couple of days, and then about 2 weeks later, it was the end of the season. So that was it. So,
Yeah, I mean, using a track reference, I mean, you got to pass along the baton at some
mm-hmm.
point to the person
Yep.
that's younger or passionate. I think it's just as we get older and more mature, we realize that. Um, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Well, I'm going to retire.
Retired. Okay, that's number one.
Yep. So
And
I'll still be in the area.
you've got time. I think you made mention that your wife's a little bit younger and is going to teach a little bit
Mm-hmm.
longer.
She did some traveling early on, so
Okay.
she needs more years. Yeah.
Okay. So what are you going to do in that interim where she's working, you're retired?
Yeah. Well, ironically, I hope to be doing coaching, but not athletic coaching.
Okay.
So I've been involved with the video coaching
Oh,
that Hilton has done.
okay.
I was I think I was in that first group. And I think it's something I want to pursue on my own,
Mm-hmm.
or probably not at my own business, but maybe join a business that
Mm-hmm.
already has something like this established.
Great.
And, since I left, it was hard to be a really good coach and a really good teacher at the same time. That was another thing I found. So when I stopped coaching, I really focused a lot more on my teaching, which was great. And I think I've become a much better teacher because I had that time to do that. But then it gets to a point too where you're like, I feel like as an influencer, that I can influence other teachers to be great teachers. And then, it's an exponential effect then,
Mm-hmm.
we get older, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you see the younger teachers coming in that, ironically, some of them, I don't know if you had this yet, but some of them you taught.
Yes,
Yep.
that's correct.
So, you have an opportunity to help them again,
Mm-hmm.
and I love that aspect
Mm-hmm.
now. Like I feel like I do some of my best work with adults now,
Mm-hmm.
talking with them and seeing, just letting them just to be reflective, ask those questions that go like, you chose to do this here. Why did you choose to do that? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you want to do with that? And let them like talk it out,
Mm-hmm.
I love that aspect of it. So,
Sounds like you're already thinking you're not retired yet.
yeah.
Some other, I guess I consider fun questions. What's your favorite food?
It's a hard one. I don't know if I could settle in on one. During the pandemic, I picked up, I bought a smoker
Okay.
and started smoking meats and stuff like that. So I like doing that.
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
That's a pretty good one. Smoking meat takes
Yeah.
a while. Right?
Yeah, it does.
That's just not thrown on the grill for 5 minutes.
No, it's not. Not at
How
all.
about favorite movie?
Favorite movie? Yeah, I see. Straight movie, maybe Shawshank Redemption.
Uh-huh. Because
Yeah.
when I gave you time to think about that, and this was interesting, and I
Yeah,
did want
I
you to
did
say
think about it initially, and I forgot to think about
enjoying
it
any
later.
movie that centers around a father-son relationship.
Yes, that too.
Any one movie that immediately came to mind when I raised
What did
that?
I see recently that God, I've become a sap over the years? It's like,
no,
you're
I
sitting
think
watching movies and like,
it's
man,
just-
you
I can't tell.
connect,
Yeah.
you connect with that. And that father-son role was a movie recently. I can't remember, but anyone that's got this father-son relationship, you want to. But it was about a father who had not been a good father initially. It's killing me that I can't remember the movie now. But but he turned around, you know, like
Exactly.
he turned around. Things started like he became a better father. It was more about the son,
Mm-hmm.
but then the son's viewing the father. And, you know, at the end, you know, that's what you want,
Right.
you know, you want that connection,
Right.
you know?
Favorite book? You said you like nonfiction earlier, but I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know if I have a favorite book. I
Okay.
like to read,
Okay.
but I don't know if I have a favorite one.
All right.
Sorry.
Leisure. It's all right. Leisure activity.
Anything
You ever-
outside. I like to be
anything
outside. I picked up golf again.
Okay.
I'd given up on it over years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you golf, when you have a bad shot, you don't try to hit harder the next time. But that was my mentality when I was
Right.
younger.
Right.
So I just got too frustrated with it. But I picked it up because my kids wanted to try
Okay.
it. I'm like, all right, well,
Well, I think it
So-
goes back to that father-son relationship. You want
yeah.
things to experience with your
Yep.
kids and your sons, and I think that son-father relationship very important.
yeah,
TV show, or don't you watch TV? Or
I do. I'm a big. Now that Netflix come around, it's like you watch those little mini series and
Mhm.
stuff like that. But I like the sci-fi kind of like what they call them, the genre of mind benders, you know, like where it's like a plot twist. Yeah, I like those kind of things. There was a movie not a movie, but a series on Netflix that ironically it's subtitled, you know, so you have to. I think it's either German or something like that. It's called Dark,
mm-hmm.
and it's I don't know, very sci-fi.
Mhm.
They go back in time, go forward in time, you know, a lot of that kind of stuff. So, but
Any quote that speaks mind to you?
my dad always said, "You work hard and then you play hard,"
Mm-hmm.
and he goes, "But you got to work hard first."
I like that.
Yeah, and I it's like I've tried to live my life that way, you know, just because the work becomes fun,
Mhm.
you know, as long as it doesn't feel like work, you know,
Mhm.
even though sometimes it does.
Which is
when
kind
you're
of
in the grind.
sounds like your retirement plan is going to be a little bit like that.
Yeah,
You're going to
yeah.
be working, but it's fun.
Well, I would go crazy if I didn't, you know.
I know.
I can't imagine doing nothing. I mean, at the end of the summer vacation, you're ready. You're like, okay, let's go back to work.
I'm ready after a week.
Yeah.
But maybe that's because I'm with my wife all the time. God love her to soul, but love her to death. But she's ready to send me back.
Yeah.
One of my last questions before I get to your final thought: if you could have dinner with anyone from history, who would it be? People sometimes hit presidents. They sometimes hit people from their family.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could go with either one of those. You know, I never met either one of my grandfathers,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and maybe to be able to talk to them to see,
Mhm.
because they were, my dad's dad, he was an immigrant from Poland. And just what was that like?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what was it like coming here, not speaking, he didn't
Mm-hmm.
speak the language at first, you know.
Mm-hmm.
He passed away when my dad was 16. My dad had to and my grandmother, you know, was stricken with grief for it, I guess.
Sure.
And so he was actually the one that helped raise his younger siblings who
Mm-hmm.
he had a sister who was 1 year younger than him. And then he had a sister who was about 15 years younger. And then my grandmother was pregnant when my grandfather passed away. So those two younger, my aunt and uncle that were younger than my dad, were, you know, even that, you know, and life's all about relationships, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
My dad had Alzheimer's, and
So,
he, we were talking about going to Bills games and
Mhm.
stuff, and that was part of the hard part was, you know, his mental acuity was not there anymore, and I'm blessed in a lot of ways. Both my parents, I got to say goodbye to them,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think a lot of people. One, maybe they had opportunity but weren't ready to do that, or just didn't have the opportunity. I remember going to a Bills game where just the two of us were driving, and I just said, you know, like, Dad, you did this for me today, you know, all the things you want to tell your dad, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I still remember him going, yeah, so how do you think the Bills are going to do today?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it was
Right.
like, okay, he wasn't quite there, but, you know,
Right.
he wasn't connecting all that stuff. But I got to say it, and,
Right.
and it meant so much for me to be able to say that. And I got to say same thing the day before my mom passed away. I knew we knew it was going to be any day.
Mm-hmm.
So, at that point, it was just to be able to tell her, So, I guess not really an interview of a famous person, but, have those.
More
I'm just
time.
grateful to have those opportunities.
Well, what I can say is your mom and dad would be very proud, and they are very proud. And I can say I'm really glad I had you on the podcast because I learned so much about you. And I know that the kids that you've already coached and taught and the ones that you will teach and coach and your own children are very lucky to have you.
Yeah, I
in their
appreciate it.
lives.
Thank you.
And
It was great to be on there.
good. And when you start that business of being a video coach, don't make yourself a stranger.
Yeah, absolutely
Mike
not.
Szczepanik. And
Thanks,
this has
Mike.
been the Big H Podcast along with Mike Szczepanik. Thank you very much for guests for tuning in, and we'll be back with future episodes.
The Big H Podcast, tune in now. Conversations that'll wow. Laugh and learn, stay a while. Let's explore that Hilton style. From the highs to the lows, every story just explodes. Mike's got questions on the go, diving deep from head to toe. Every week the guests align, sharing moments so divine. Stay with us, the pace is fine. Every episode you'll find